Hello once again everyone, and welcome back to, now that I am back from the School of the Renaissance Soldier, and I'll be talking about that again in a different video that might be coming out at the same time this one might be coming out later. It's time to start talking about H.A.W again, and in particular, this is meant to be a nice little guide for everybody, regardless of position. If you're training to fight at H.A.W, these are the main things that I recommend you work on knowing, some of which are sort of requirements, the rest are just generally stuff you should know. So, using our basis as the spear, and I'm using a steel spearhead so you can see it more easily against the backdrop. We're going to talk about kind of the three main thrusts you should know, then I'll go into four main parries you should know, and things along those lines. So, first off, your starting position. You may be fighting up front like a 1, you may be behind like a 3, you may even be up here like a 2, right? Doesn't really matter. But the point is, at some point, guaranteed, you will be thrusting. There are 3 thrusts that I recommend you practice. The first one is the inside thrust, which is going to be your normal standard thrust. You're going to bring the butt of the weapon up to your right pectoral, and from there you will just simply extend the leg so that you're powered forward with that shape. So I don't reach out, I just bring it up and then push forward. That keeps it nice and locked to your body so that when you hit target, you've got good force behind it, allowing you to then push and drive through mail, or at least give a stout enough thrust that through mail they're going to feel it. So again, inside thrust. Nice and straightforward. I'll show up from the very front. So here, inside thrust. You don't want to be going too far with this, just one extension back, nothing too complicated. Now, 90% of the time, 9 times out of 10, that's going to be the thrust you launch, that's going to be the thrust you land, regardless of whatever's happening in regards to them. However, that one extra time you need a little bit of extra opposition is where we get the outside thrust. So the outside thrust is where I'm going to take my tip and bring it across to my left pectoral instead. So normally it'd be up here at the right, it comes across the left. The way this works is my hand slightly slides down on the haft, so that it comes up into my left pectoral. My hand will turn over so it's on top, and that's what locks it in place. That way, when I hit with good force, nice and strong, and I'm making opposition against anything that comes from my left side. If you want to, if you've got the body mechanics for it, opening the body here by turning that lead foot can help quite a bit. Alternatively, there will be situations if room allows that you can maybe do a passing step with it. But generally speaking, just up, push, return, back. So I'll do that again. Outside thrust, up, push, back, in. Here's that now from the front. Up, push, back, in. Up, push, back, in. Breastplates allowing, you can also just put it on the front of your breastplate just here on the side as opposed to in the middle. You achieve the same thing. So, that's 2 thrusts for the opposition on either side. Now you have your high thrust, which is going to be just you lift, extend. Now, the big thing here is regardless of grip, be this thumbs to tip, thumb to thumb, thumbs to butt. All you're looking for here is just the extension of your elbows, not bringing your hand down. This causes you to lose out on that protective factor. This is your shortest thrust out of all of them, but it has the most potential plunging power. So just extend, push, return back. Extend, push, return back. Different grip, extend, push, return back. I don't want to see this, because then when your spear gets knocked to the side, you're not going to get it back. This is strong and in your hand, and you're fine. Here's that now from the front. So I'm here, I move up, extend, push, return back. Extend, push, return back. Different grip, extend, push, return back. Nothing too complicated, really. Now, you can also do that from the low position, I'll point out, by just lifting, going, same sort of idea. You can combo through all of these pretty quickly. Those are really the 3 main thrusts you're going to need to do. The only one that I haven't really gone over is the idea of the flung thrust, but that's just an inside thrust where you let your hand slide. Remember, that one doesn't kill mail, so there's not a lot of point doing it unless you can get a for sure shot on a soft target. So for now, don't freak out about it. So, inside, outside, high, nice and simple. What about our parries? Our parries are very, very simplistic. It's just going to be anything comes on this side of the spear, give a crisp beat, then you'll be able to thrust from the inside. So all that is just across, extend. Anything comes on the outside of your spear, same idea. Across, extend. Your choice of across, extend into the outside thrust, or across, extend into the inside thrust. Depends upon how much of a beat you get. Certainly when it comes to fighting 3 assailants, guy from this side thrusts in, he's probably going to be a lot stronger. You may need that opposition. This guy or this guy, though, you'll probably be able to make a big enough beat. But I'll get to that in another video. So, outside, inside parry, they're just pops. You extend down the line if you see an opening. Next we have our hanging parry. This is any time your spear tip has gotten forced low and you're having to defend yourself with the middle of your haft. It happens on two sides. Thrust comes over my left arm, that's a cross. Thrust comes under my left arm, that's a cross. And all it is just bringing this in front of me so that I can just barely get rid of the spear tip. So again, hanging parry 1, hanging parry 2, all good. The final parry you may need to do is what's called a snap parry. That's again from a low position. Something comes up the middle, and this works best if it's coming in this plane. You can still achieve it if it's here, but I want to get back to middle, so I'm just going to hinge down with my right hand, pop, and that coming back in basically forms an inside parry, and you're good. You may find yourself in a situation, those tend to combo together, where your spear got stuck low, you got to defend real quick with here, then you use that snap to get back to position. That's all the parries really you need to know against thrusts. Against cuts, we'll get to that again in a second, but for the most part, this is what you're going to be doing standing in the line. It's just going to be, you got your standard thrusts, occasionally you have to do a complicated one. For the most part, it's just doing what you got to do. Nothing too complicated, nothing really crazy. And that's really what allows you to fight from a nice firm foot in your line, doing what you got to do. Now, when it comes to slightly something more complex, if you are, rather than being a 1 or a 3 or what have you, and you are instead finding yourself in the position of being a 2, now you've got to also learn how to cut. So one, you need to practice those thrusts with this weapon. So inside, outside, high, right? All my parries and stuff like that. But now you need to be able to cut. So what you need to be able to achieve, what you should practice more often than anything else, is taking your time. You don't need to learn a ton of cuts. You need to learn one cut, and you need to get really good at it. And that's just cutting down from your dominant side, in this case the left side since you're left-handed formation, onto a head without hitting too hard, but also not hitting too softly. Just a nice, cool, you would feel that, right? Hopefully with less deflection. That's all you really need to be able to do is to cut, return, and just be able to come back with good order. That was a good one. The more you use your right hand coming again to that breast, as you push this out with the body weight, the better of a percussive hit you get without needing to put a lot of muscle or force into it. The firmer of a hit you get, the more likely he is to call it a day. And then just returning up in place. What you can do, and this will require practicing with a partner, just like parries would, is after you've gotten good at cutting against the target and not braining them, nor deflecting, then the next thing that happens is any sort of cut comes toward the head. It's the only way to stop it. It's coming in from above. I mean, there are other things you can do, but for the most part, that's what you got to do. As soon as that parry is launched, this high parry, you need to be able to hook and pull and thrust without putting everything behind it. Now, this is one where, as a 2, is where you really have the hardest time. Just launching out cuts that hit well without braining someone takes practice, sure, but once you learn how to do it, it's not all that complicated. Where they tend to suffer is then when you end up fighting against someone who is a 3 or lighter. Maybe they're not in a heavy enough helmet for you to worry about cutting at them, so you're stuck thrusting, or alternatively, they are in one, but it's not economical in that moment to worry about just cutting them in the head and have to resort to thrusting. Being able to strike so that they have to block up high with that nice prime parade, or alternatively, just being able to throw your thrust up there so that you hook, drag down, extend that thrust, and making it that nice motion of pull, extend as much as necessary. Depending upon how much of a pull you get, you may not even need to extend. You may just need to return to guard and they'll walk right onto it with enough force to give out. But alternatively, you may need to extend this thrust out back to target. And basically what we don't want to see is people doing that. That hits with a lot of force, it's unnecessary force, and I didn't even make it that hard. You need to, and since you're pulling them into it, can be even worse. So being able to, with control, just like with our strike, hook and extend with the wherewithal of whether or not they're stepping forward, or if you actually need to extend the arms enough to get that touch. So that's the second thing you should really, so that's that third or fourth thing you should really know about being a 2. So overall, nothing too complicated that you need to practice with your respective polearm. Obviously, if you're using a spear, if someone does cut at your head because you have a helmet, this is your best bet. They'll also point out there are other things that you can do. And of course, if you're standing in the position of the 3, things like using that snap parry to bind up against things, or things along those lines, etc. You'll get creative, but really those are the main things that you should be focusing on. Your inside thrust, your outside thrust, your prime thrust, the 4 parries against a thrust, the 1 parry against a cut, and that's only if the cut's coming down for your head. The 1 cut that goes for the head, forcing that parry, the hook and stab, and then for the rest of it, it's just, avoiding that as much as possible. So that's really all about your need in the line. The rest of it, flung thrusts, other more complicated things you may know. They're nice, they have their place, but for the most part, that bog standard stuff will keep you alive, keep the guys next to you alive for a good long time, and that shouldn't be too complicated. So, otherwise though, thank you very, very much. We'll go over some other yeehaw related content another time.